Okay, now I'm also recording the audio, not just like last time. Whatever. So today this is about, I want to know if you're struggling with finishing your tracks. So do you struggle with finishing your tracks? And let me talk about this, and I would give you some advice and ideas how I overcome this problem of not finishing tracks or finishing tracks, you know what I mean. I remember since I went to kindergarten, my parents got me a keyboard from my grandpa, and I was playing around and got a cakewalk version for Windows in end of 90s. But it was in 2002 where I really seriously started with making music, playing around with DAWs and plugins and things, and couldn't just finish a track. And I thought back then, I had a lot of time being in high school, right? I thought like, if I just would have this kind of gear, it would solve all my problems. But obviously it's wrong, right? Fast forward 2022, I have all the gear I want to have. I can all the gear I imagine. I can just buy it, and I'm really happy about this. But on the other side, being a family guy and having a full-time job, I just don't have the time anymore like I had it back then in high school. And I'm still struggling around with finishing tracks. Interesting, isn't it? And so the problem is not really the gear or something, or maybe the knowledge that I have. I try to identify 6 areas of problems. Number 1 is you might not maybe invest enough time into what I call jam sessions. So just play around with your gear, just play around maybe with friends or with other people. Play around with the gear that you have and not really focus on producing or technology or whatever. Just play around with the stuff and record yourself. Problem number 2, you might not really master your craft. You might not really know what your gear is capable of, and you might not really know what your studio can do. So you need to invest really time in your gear, like in your guitar as a guitarist, right? That you know what you can do with your instrument and with your technology. Problem number 3 is you might not invest enough time in solving technical problems or organizational problems or matters. And by this I mean maybe your hard disk just ran out of space, yeah? Or maybe you have some broken cable and you did not really fix it and it's stopping you. Or maybe your MIDI driver is not really up to date of your MIDI keyboard, you name it. Reason number 4 is you might not really finish producing your tracks. And by this I mean if you have your tracks and maybe jam sessions, there are really engineering skills and engineering craft needed to actually finish producing a track. Producing a track is not really finishing a track, it's one area of responsibility. And reason number 5 is it could be that you do not really review your tracks. You don't really listen to it on different sound systems. You don't really get feedback from people that you actually care about. So reason number 5 is getting some review sessions done for your tracks. And last but not least is obviously finishing your tracks. And by that I mean really sending stuff out, doing a demo master, getting a master actually, and being on time in that. However, why I'm telling you this is I discovered this for myself, and now if I flip around these problems or this area of responsibility, you get to solutions, and I believe you should focus on the area of responsibilities. Coming back again. Area of responsibility number 1, jam session. Go into your studio and try to just focus on a jam session. Play around, as said already, play around. Maybe as a guitarist, you play some chords, you just play your instrument, you want to record yourself, and don't really have in mind to actually do a track, and maybe you just want to finish on, you just want to focus on a specific synthesizer, for example, right? But not the whole thing. You do not produce the music right now, for example, right? This is a jam session. I say just start your track, start new ideas and note them down. Area number 2 is master your craft. In my case, for example, it's about comparing synthesizers to each other. Maybe I have a sound in mind, a very specific sound, and maybe I try to do it on the Nord lead and then maybe on the wires and then maybe with a software that I have. Or I try to compare the different equalizer plugins that I have and see where are the pros and where are the cons. Maybe I try something with a hardware compressor I have over there instead with a software plugin. This is like what I call really master your craft, where I say, okay, I don't really have an idea of a sound, but I try to maybe switch a thing how I always have done it. I try to improve my technical skills. And as in the context of a guitar guy, I would say this is like when you try to, don't know, improve your barré chords, or maybe your flageolet sounds, or maybe whatever, how you can twist around with the fingers. Reason number 3 is, might sound like the most boring one, but it's not really boring, if you know what I mean. So I'm saying solving technical issues or organizational matters. And by this I mean as the more outboard gear you have, I think the problems are growing exponentially. And by this I mean you might have a broken cable maybe somewhere, that stops you from using your hardware reverb, or you might, I don't know, have some problems, as said already, the MIDI driver of your MIDI keyboard. Just write down a list if you have such problems, and don't maybe try to solve it as soon as possible, like in a jam session. But note it down, and once this list is getting bigger and bigger, of course you will have more and more pain. But then really take your time and solve all these issues. Like it was last Friday, I sat down here and was using with the soldering iron, fixing my delay pedal I have over there, and now I can use it again. Or I have other issues like a broken cable, I mentioned it already, or this Alesis keyboard is making some weird noises when pressing the keys. I want to get rid of that, but right now it doesn't really stop me from doing jam sessions and playing around or finishing really tracks, but I have it on my list. And by organizational matters I mean block your time for emails and for communication, and for maybe free up your hard drive to really store all these things what you have. You should not be blocked by technology or by anything around here in the studio. Just should have time to really work on tracks. Number 4 for me is, I call it producing tracks. And now obviously, right, you as an EDM guy, you might know, producing is very important. But I mean, imagine you're sitting behind the desk, SSL mixing desk, and you focus on the knobs, and you put in there a compressor as the insert effect and so on. This is really producing, it's engineering. But you don't go there as the mixing guy and record a new guitar, right? So I always come back to this analogy of rock band, where the guitarist is playing his guitar, the bass player is playing the bass line, the vocalist is singing her nice vocals, and the drummer is just having a hangover and tries to play drums. No, just kidding, but you get the idea, right? These guys then do not jump behind the mixing desk and put in their compressor as an insert effect or whatever, but this is very often what happens as with us EDM guys. So really think of this, that you really try to focus on producing maybe some sessions that you have already. Reason number 5, feedback and review your tracks. This, interestingly, I don't do really often here where I'm sitting, but I have my tracks, so I have my own system. I store these jam sessions as a preview MP3 into my OneDrive, and via OneDrive, so into the cloud. Then of course I can listen to it on my phone, and I make sure that the folder of my preview tracks is available offline. Because we are here in Germany and you don't have internet everywhere. It might be in your country, but here I want to make sure that I can listen to it in the subway, that I can listen it in the car while don't having LTE available. And being in the car, I listen to the bass. I see, is the arrangement maybe not interesting enough? Are the hi-hats annoying? You name it. Everything I try to be objective about my own tracks, and I make notes down to myself what I can improve the next time I'm in the studio. By the way, this is one of the few use cases where I'm using speech to text like Siri, where I note down things to myself, which doesn't really work out very often, but other problem. And of course, it's nice when you have someone available, or when you know somebody who really can review and give you objective feedback as well. So, but I learned for myself, it's really difficult showing unfinished tracks to other people. They don't understand maybe that the levels are not fine, or that it's not loud enough, or that the drums are shitty or whatever. But really having someone by hand and trusting somebody who can give you objective feedback, I think this is also quite key to improve your tracks and really do review sessions. And last but not least, area number 6 is finishing your tracks. And by this I mean not really finishing tracks, I mean finishing. So imagine you have a session around and you are asked by a label or by a DJ, hey, can you send me your latest tracks? What do? Do you have to sit here hours to get this done? Do you have your schema how to do some demo mastering, for example? So I was doing a video about demo master tracks. You should check this out. And you should be able to send your tracks out as soon as possible, so that others can really compare it, maybe in a DJ set when they play their music. Reason number 6, or area number 6, is finishing your tracks and really be able to send them out once they are really there. I hope I could give you an overview of the areas I have in mind to actually have a schema with finishing my tracks. However, there's one thing I would love to add, which did not really fit into my schema. Recently I thought of a new idea, and I call this maybe jam session or producing guideline. What do I mean by this? So at least to me it happens very often. Let's say I want to record a bass line. So I go to the Mini Brute and play some bass sound, or I load up an 808 sample, or you get the idea, right? But very often I do the same thing. As said, I go to the Mini Brute, I go to the sampler, I do whatever. Or you might know me for using these Roland Rompler pads in my atmospheric drum and bass. This is my schema, this is how I do music. And you might have your schema in your head already because you have your own style, your own sound, right? But maybe really note it down. What you actually do might help. It's just a guideline. It doesn't tell you how to do tracks, but you get maybe an idea. And the idea is, if I don't really have a baseline in mind, what really could work on the track, I have my guideline that guides me maybe to the proper sound. And this is something I would love maybe to talk about in the near future. I still try to figure it out for myself. I still try to note it down for myself how a schema or a guideline like this could look like. But I think it somehow belongs to what I was talking about today. So I hope you like my ideas, and maybe it helps you to finish your tracks. Or let me know if you think this is complete nonsense and bullshit, so let me know as well, because I'm really interested in how other people or how other producers or musicians are overcoming this problem, especially with making electronic music. It's not always